And welcome once again to yet another exciting edition of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. How is everybody doing here on this Monday as you are listening to us on Noon and Zone, home of Southern Sports, WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key. We have got a jam-packed show for you today because I have got my Olympics recap as the United States has the most medals of any country, and they go out with a bang. The closing ceremonies, and now it's on to LA in 4 years. And I can't believe the Olympics is officially over. We also have my thoughts on the preseason for week one. What are some of the takeaways? Who are some of the players that stood out? And the Atlanta Braves' woes continue as it got ugly last night, giving up 7 runs in the 8th inning to the Colorado Rockies. They lose 2 out of 3 against the Rockies as they face the San Francisco Giants for a 4-game series, and it is a huge playoff battle because the Giants are right in the thick of it, and the Braves are right on the outskirts of the playoffs. They are in jeopardy of missing out on the playoffs for the first time since 2017. Can you believe that? I mean, we expect the Braves to make the playoffs every year, and they could be in jeopardy of missing out on the playoffs. The Brandon Ayuk trade watch continues. I mean, he is turning down teams left and right. He's already turned down the Patriots. He's turned down the Browns. And he might be turning down the Steelers. By the time this show airs, he might be traded to the Steelers. I don't know. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what's going on this week in Georgia Alabama Sports Live. We've got a very busy week. I know myself am going to be doing something just about every day all the way up until week one of high school football on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Don't forget, tomorrow will be the premiere of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge scoreboard show that will air on Georgia Alabama Sports Live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays starting at noon. So you might want to check that out. I'm going to preview week one in high school football. And not just the Chattahoochee Valley, but I'm going to preview the surrounding areas to include Troup County and as far south as Eufaula. And we also have Dawson and Albany. Those surrounding areas around the Chattahoochee Valley, I'm going to preview that on tomorrow's show. We are also going to talk about this new AP poll that's coming out, the top 25 for college football as week 0. And I know that people don't like calling it week 0, but I mean, it's not really officially week 1 in college football. We'll preview that. We'll talk about that first week in college football, August the 24th. We've got Georgia Tech, Florida State in Ireland, hoping to get Bryce Kuhn on the show later this week. I do plan on having Jonathan Bam Rivers. So I got a slate of guests. I got a fantastic lineup of guests next week. So stick around and you might learn something here on the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the Olympics recap. The United States, both basketball teams win the gold medal. The United States, little bit closer for call. They were playing France. You know, the United States men and women's team both playing France, and the women's team almost lost. I mean, they only won by 1 point. The United States men's team ends up defeating France to win the gold medal. Steph Curry was brilliant. The United States had to get their 3 superstars to play at a high level, and you're talking veterans. LeBron, a 21-year veteran. Kevin Durant, an 18-year veteran. Steph Curry, a 16-year veteran. These veterans had to carry the United States to the gold medal, and it almost didn't happen because they were down 17 in the semifinals against Serbia, which, by the way, Serbia ends up beating Germany to take the bronze. So the United States basketball teams end up getting a clean sweep. However, the experiment of the 3x3 basketball tournament didn't really pan out. They have got to get some players for that tournament, especially in 2028, because that is really a weakness of theirs. I mean, the women did take the bronze in that tournament, and some of the other things that to talk about. The women took gold in the 4x400 meter relay. Actually, the men took gold in the 4x400 meter relay. The women took gold in the 4x100 meter relay. I always love track and field events because it really is exciting. You know, the first part of the Olympics is swimming. You know, Katie Ledecky was dominating that, and then the Olympics wrapped up with track and field. And then the women's soccer team ends up getting gold by having a 1-0 contest over Brazil to win that. Women's water polo. Actually, the men's water polo ends up getting the bronze. A lot of great Olympic events. The women's hoops wins their 8th consecutive gold medal. And the United States, with 126 medals, 40 gold, tied with China. And Italy ends up winning gold in the volleyball. Some records were broke. Diana Taurasi, her 6th gold medal in basketball. For the men's basketball team, Kevin Durant got his 4th gold medal. You have a lot of great things happening in the Olympics, a great closing ceremony, and we close out this Olympic Games. Here are some of the final totals when it comes to the athletes who have had the most medals. So Tori Husky with a total of 5 medals. She had 3 gold, 2 silver. Reagan Smith with 5 medals. Simone Biles with 4 medals. She had 3 gold and 1 bronze. Gretchen Walsh and Kate Douglas both with 4 medals. And Gabby Thomas had 3 gold medals. Caleb Dressel with 3 gold medals. And Katie Ledecky had 4 total medals, 2 gold, 1 silver, and 1 bronze. So the Olympics is officially over. And I know that the casual sports fan will like to watch the Olympics. But now we've got football just around the corner. We got week 1 of high school football. The first week of college football will be in 2 weeks. And then the NFL right now, the preseason is going on. But that first week of the NFL will take place on September the 5th as the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. So my takeaway in the NFL preseason games, you really can't take a whole lot away. I did watch last night the Cowboys and the Rams because that was nationally televised on the NFL Network. Got to see Stetson Bennett end up pull that win out. He had some good plays. It's great to see Stetson Bennett back playing football. I saw some good things out of Trey Lance, even though he struggled. And by the way, Stetson Bennett did throw an interception in that game as well. There's been some players that have struggled, but there's also been some players that have stood up. I think that Bo Nix for the Denver Broncos has been impressive. For the Patriots, Drake May hasn't been all that impressive. In fact, Joe Milton looks like the better quarterback. It's possible that Joe Milton could beat out Drake May for the starting position. And locally here in Georgia, the Atlanta Falcons on Friday, they lose to the Miami Dolphins 20-13. You know, the score doesn't really matter. We just want to see how well Michael Penix Jr. performed. Well, he was 9 of 16 for 104 yards. He didn't really do too much, a quarterback rating of 76. But, you know, he did what he had to do. Not much of a run game. Jace McClellan had 9 carries for 30 yards. Chris Blair was the leading receiver with 45 yards. And hopefully we'll have more of the starters play in the second preseason game. Remember, there's only 2 preseason games. The Atlanta Falcons will take on the Baltimore Ravens this Saturday on the NFL Plus. Speaking of the Baltimore Ravens, they actually had a very good preseason game against the Philadelphia Eagles. I was very impressed with the Green Bay Packers. I think that the Packers are going to look pretty good. Very impressed with Bo Nix. I think that Bo Nix is going to have a pretty good season with the Denver Broncos. He might even win that starting job. Jaden Daniels actually stood out, and he made some good plays for the Washington Commanders. And he was impressive in that first drive. I think that Caleb Williams was impressive for the Chicago Bears. And then I think that Hendon Hooker could be a surprise for the Detroit Lions. I would not be shocked if he wins that number 2 starting job. like I mentioned, you can't take a whole lot away from the NFL preseason because majority of the starters don't play. You're not seeing the number one defense, and you're not really showing a whole lot of plays. But if there's anything to take away from the NFL preseason is that some of these quarterbacks can play. And that is saying something about, at least being a backup in this league. And, for a guy that was hoping that Trey Lance could have been the face of the franchise for the 49ers, I just wanted to see him have success. So I know in my mind that wasn't a complete bust because he didn't really get a fair shake. I mean, if Brock Purdy did not turn out to be a Pro Bowl quarterback that led the 49ers to the Super Bowl, I do believe the 49ers would have kept Trey Lance because, they gave up so many picks to get him. He was the overall number 3 pick in the 2021 NFL draft. And the San Francisco 49ers would have worked with Trey Lance, especially in that system with Kyle Shanahan. But Brock Purdy worked out. Speaking of the 49ers, they lose to the Tennessee Titans in their preseason game. Brock Purdy did not play, but Will Levis threw 2 touchdown passes. If you're a Tennessee Titans fan, you got to have some optimism that Will Levis is going to be your quarterback. I don't believe Ryan Tannehill or Malik Henry is going to lead the Titans to anything. And you also got to think, well, Josh Dobbs for the 49ers might end up getting that number 2 shot for the 49ers. And the Brandon Ayuk holdout continues. And I know there's talks that the 49ers might cave in and give Brandon Ayuk what he wants. And that is top 5 receiver money, even though I believe Brandon Ayuk is not a top 5 receiver. Brandon Ayuk is a very good receiver. He had over 1,300 yards last year, had amazing catches. He was a very good security blanket for Brock Purdy. But this is Kyle Shanahan's system. They have Christian McCaffrey. They have George Kittle. They have Deebo Samuel. Can they survive without Brandon Ayuk? Well, sure. I mean, there was even a trade talk. They were going to trade Brandon Ayuk to the Cleveland Browns for Amari Cooper. I would have been okay with that. I actually think that Ricky Pearsall could step in and do the exact same things that Brandon Ayuk does. But the 49ers have never had this many great wide receivers all at once. Probably not since Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, and J.J. Stokes. And I'm being honest. The 90s was the last time the 49ers had this many great wide receivers. Even when they drafted Michael Crabtree, well, that was it. I mean, who else alongside Michael Crabtree was going to get the ball down the field? I mean, Vernon Davis was a tight end. But it was Michael Crabtree, that Super Bowl year. They did get Randy Moss well past his prime. I mean, you got players like Cedric Wilson, Arnez Battle, Rashad Woods. I mean, they really whiffed on wide receivers, drafting A.J. Jenkins. So getting Brandon Ayuk, home run, and I hope that he stays a 49er and they get a deal done. Because I'm tired of seeing the news that Brandon Ayuk is getting traded to the Steelers. It's clickbait. People are putting those stories out there because, they're either a Steelers fan or a Browns fan and they want to see Brandon Ayuk on their team. All right, so last week I went on a rant. I talked about the Atlanta Braves and how terrible they were, losing 5 straight. Folks, it's getting bad. It's really getting bad because the Atlanta Braves, even though they won Saturday 11-8, the bats are coming alive. They had an 8-2 lead going into the 8th inning. Jorge Soler ends up hitting 2 home runs, but they lose 9-8. And Spencer Schwallenbach pitched a very good game, but wow, the bullpen. Luke Jackson, Luke Jackson is going back to the form that he was when they played the Dodgers in the NLCS, and he gave up that 3-run homer to Cody Bellinger. I mean, Luke Jackson is going to Luke Jackson. The Braves bullpen pretty much blew this game. They lose 2 out of 3. They needed to win this series because the Rockies is one of the worst teams in the league. And now I'm looking at the wild card race. The Diamondbacks and the Padres have the 2 top spots. And right now, the Atlanta Braves, they lead for the 6th seed, but the Mets are half game behind. The Mets, they're not doing themselves any favors. They've lost 3 straight. I mean, the Mets are going to be the Mets. And then the Cardinals and the Giants have a 1.5 game deficit from the last wild card spot. So this 4-game series with the San Francisco Giants is very important for the Atlanta Braves. So tonight at Oracle Park, they will take on the San Francisco Giants. Chris Sale, a Cy Young leading candidate who has 13 wins, taking the mound, going up against another Cy Young candidate who threw a no-hitter, Blake Snell. This should be a good pitching matchup. And this is one reason why I've kind of been a fair weather Bay Area sports fan. First pitch is at 9:45 at night. I mean, I'm not staying up to watch this game. I'm sorry. I have work. This used to happen when I first moved to Atlanta in 2006, and I was a Giants fan. I used to listen to KNBR 680 on the radio because I had an XM subscription. So I was, listening to all the baseball games. I had a baseball package for Sirius XM. And I used to listen to Giants games, and I would fall asleep before the game was even over. And, I love the San Francisco Giants, but I can't take those 10 o'clock at night start times ever. And, I'll casually just follow up with them. But right now, like to see them make the playoffs, but I also want to see the Braves make the playoffs as well. So this is a very important series, not just for the Braves, but for the Giants as well. All right, so the AP Top 25 poll is going to be out this week, and I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of changes from the coaches poll. I really don't, but what I do think is that week 0, or whatever you want to call it, we've got some pretty good games. Florida State taking on Georgia Tech in Ireland. That's at 12 o'clock on ESPN. We've got Montana State taking on New Mexico. SMU makes their ACC debut taking on Nevada. Hawaii plays at midnight like they always do. Not a whole lot of games on that first week. And then Thursday games on August 29th. The one game that I'm looking at, North Carolina, Minnesota, that looks pretty cool. Colorado taking on North Dakota State. That's probably going to get a lot of views because it is Colorado. It is prime. It is Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter. The casual sports fan wants to see Colorado, and they had great ratings last year. I think that they're going to continue to have great ratings. And, Friday night, when we're calling high school football, TCU, Stanford, 10:30, I'll keep an eye on that. But then, we got to get up, get ready for Clemson and Georgia, August the 31st in Atlanta. And Georgia is a 2-touchdown favorite. And I think that it's going to shake up the college football playoff. I look at the first couple of weeks. There's not going to be a whole big of a difference, but you got Texas playing Michigan. You got Clemson playing Georgia. You got some pretty good matchups. And then you get to Alabama and Georgia on September 28th. I'm excited about college football. I cannot wait. On my shows, I will try to preview not just Georgia, Auburn, and Alabama, the local teams of the Chattahoochee Valley, but I'll also talk about Troy, Georgia State, Georgia Southern, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State, West Georgia, LaGrange College, Mercer. I'll try to get all those teams as well to give them some love because, not everybody is talking about those teams. And that's why I'm excited to have Bryce Kuhn on the show later this week because when it comes to talking Georgia Tech football, I don't think there's anybody better in the business than Bryce Kuhn when it comes to talking Georgia Tech football. All right, so we have flown by this show. It's been a great show. And don't forget, Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Later this afternoon, I will be on the call for Northside and Noonan softball, the 2-time GHSA 5A champion Northside Lady Patriots. They got a new coach. Sydney Kara story. She's taken over for the longtime coach Brandon Jenkins, who's now at Harris County. And by the way, Northside plays Harris County this Thursday night at the county. We got Northside softball all week this week. Saturday morning, Calvary Christian, Northside. I will be on the call for that. So Tuesday, we got Pacelli and Columbus volleyball. We also have the Glenwood orange and white game for volleyball. We have our Calvary coaches show. We're going to have the softball coach on. We're going to have the volleyball coach on for Glenwood. Those coaches shows will air later today. We got the Harris County coaches show on Tuesday. The Georgia-Alabama Sports Live show with myself and Thrift Behringer will be Wednesday. And then it's finally here. Week 1 of high school football. Here are some of the matchups. Rick Beach will be up in Manchester for Harris County, Manchester. And by the way, if you missed the Kutsu Sports Show, that aired on Georgia-Alabama Sports Live last night. It was a great show. A lot of views. And just a big shout out to Harris County really for supporting Rick Beach and Kutsu Sports, because when you think of Harris County, you think of Rick Beach and Kutsu Sports. He's going to be up in Manchester for that one along with Chris Gates. Thrift Behringer is going to be at Kinnett Stadium for Shaw and Northside. That's going to be a big matchup as Shaw, under their second year under Coach Johnny Garner. Northside, they're trying to just bounce back from their playoff exit last year. Now they're in 4A. Coach Andrew Orpeza has a 3-year starter in Caden Clay at quarterback. And then I will be on the call at Calvary Christian, making their GIAA debut as they will take on Terrell County. And if you missed it over the weekend, I know I did because I had to work. We had Calvary Media Day. Oh, what a huge success. I want to thank the athletic director, Coach Steve Smith, Coach Emmanuel Brunson, Thrift Behringer, Chris Gates, Toygar, everybody for putting that on Georgia-Alabama Sports Live. What a huge success. And I can't wait for Calvary Christian football. So we have something unique in year 2 of Georgia-Alabama Sports Live that we have not done since we have been a company. And that is live streaming 3 football games at once. It's going to be a challenge, but we are ready, and we do have the team to do it. And I'm excited about it, and I can't wait. It's been a fun show. Don't forget, on tomorrow's show on Georgia-Alabama Sports Live, I'm going to go over the matchups for week 1 as high school football is here. It's 3 days away as LaGrange taking on Douglas of Atlanta in the Corky Kell Dave Hunter Classic at Kell High School. 4:30 is the kickoff. So on Thursday's show, I will recap some of the high school football games that happen. And then on Thursday's show, I'm going to go into more detail about the upcoming games this Friday. Well, that'll do it for me. I'm Richard Holdridge saying so long here on the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia-Alabama Sports Live. Don't forget that you can download an episode of this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also like the Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to the X. You can follow me on Instagram, and I'm also on TikTok, just in case you want to see some 1-minute highlights of the show. And that will do it here. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.